know, we have these Lunchbox events every first Thursday of the month, and it's an opportunity for us to hear about the work that individuals associated with Tayarisha, individuals who we've worked with, individuals within the school, within the university, and the research that they're doing around our broad research interests. So I'm always very grateful to be able to chair these sessions. They're always quite insightful. And today it will not be different in any particular way. Today we have Dr. Gedion Onyango, who's with us. And as a quick bio on Dr. Onyango, he's a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi, a researcher at the London School of Economics and Political Science, and the national co-investigator for Kenya for the Africa Barometer East Africa region. And his research interests really revolve around African state development and public administration and public policy. The title of the work that he's going to present to us today is around Policy Digitalisation in Africa as a review of evidence from a recently published edited volume. I don't want to get too much into his abstract. I think it's quite interesting about, drawing on these different case studies across the continent to try and better understand the nature of policy entrepreneurship within digital governance. So I'm quite excited for this conversation. As usual, we'll give Dr. Onyango about 20 to 30 minutes just to present to us. He has notified us that, if you don't see lecture slides, he's predominantly just going to kind of talk to his research. And then thereafter, we'll open it up to questions and answers for those who are in the room and those who are online. So Dr. Onyango, once again, welcome to the Tayarisha Lunchbox session. We're really excited to hear your presentation today. You can go ahead whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me for this wonderful initiative, the Lunchbox by Tayarisha. I see there are very prominent colleagues here. Some we've worked with, some we are working with, like I see Professor Gesi Karuri is here. I also see TK is here. I've read a lot of work by Caitlin on these legislative systems, evidence systems. And it's also nice to have you here. And all other colleagues that I've not met, I've not worked with or met personally. But I'm very glad to be here. And such conversations are very important in this day and age when African scholars are trying to take the center stage in leading research on their own context and how things are actually happening on the ground, rather than trying to chase the Western theories and trying to match them into our own contexts. Now, that is also actually the main rationale why this book came into being. I'll just, as a disclaimer, I'll just say that I'm not the guru in digital studies. The gurus are here, like Gesi is here, and others. I'm just trying to understand how these digital developments are impacting on state development, and especially in the manner in which the state's politics is being organized around public interest. What I refer to as public policy. We view public policy in this particular volume as the art by the process by which the politics of the day, or the political objectives of the day, state politics and the political objectives of the government, are being matched with the public interest. And there's a lot of issues there. And that's why now we were very much interested to see the role of technology in entrenching this kind of problematic relationship between political objectives and public interest in the African context, being aware of the fact that our political contexts are only developing, and that means that they have some inherent problems in as far as entrenching public interest is concerned. And in this particular volume, much as, yes, it is underpinned within these state development perspective, we are trying to look at how these digital developments, or looking at, in particular, we are looking at these the fourth industrial revolution technologies, how they have been used, or how they actually transform the relationship between the state and society, and how this narrows down to the levels or the landscape where now the government is acting in the interest, or the government is acting in a way that it tries to transform the society in its own image, or in addressing issues that are concerned with the addressing issue of public interest, or addressing problems of the society. So in this volume, we are looking at the role of technology in three major areas. We are looking at the extent to which digital technologies are leveraging issues of policy entrepreneurship, where we are just concerned with the extent to which digital technologies are enabling citizens themselves, either as individuals or citizen agencies, or in their organized forms, either in terms of civil society organizations, or in terms of academic or research organizations, on issues of advocacy, the extent to which these technologies have made it easier to bargain the government, or just to contest government's actions, and to, in one way or the other, or in the slightest way, change the manner in which the state is trying to handle its own businesses, in as far as the public interest is concerned, or issues of public policy are concerned. And that also relates to the issues of now policy tools, where we are looking at the extent to which the state is leveraging what the World Bank and others are calling GovTechs. The state is leveraging, or the government is leveraging digital platforms as instruments in addressing, or in entrenching, or in just making implementation more easy for them towards issues of public interest or public policy. And the other one also relates to issues of citizen participation, the extent to which the citizens in their own spaces trying to, influence, or to bring forth their issues to the government, to alert the governments of the day or policy actors concerning issues that are of interest to them. Now, when we look at these three areas, a lot of these technological platforms come in, whether in terms of fintechs, or in terms of civic techs, or in terms of govtechs. I don't want to go into that because the experts are here, can give us more information on that. And generally, how these technologies, whether they are invented or innovated locally, or whether they are sponsored by international development actors, how that interaction within the technological space, matching it with the issues of public policy and matching with the issues of governance, are playing out. And I would love to say that there's a lot of studies that are being done on this, but these studies tend to be divided in their own disciplinary, or in their own, what can I say, specialization areas. Hello? Do you get me?
Yeah, we can still hear you, Prof. Doc.
Yes, a lot of case studies show very interesting developments in as far as leveraging this 4IR, how do you call it, the fourth industrial technologies are concerned, either in agriculture, in education, in health, in transport, and generally now on issues of governance and all that. And we see the governments of the day are now trying to put in institutional measures and come up with policies to ensure that these things, these technologies are well taken advantage of in as far as the government governance issues are concerned. And that's why when you look at our volume, I begin by looking at how are the state systems, the African state systems, how are they positioned in ensuring that they take advantage of or they leverage these technologies. And I use the case of Kenya and South Africa, given their high rating in DSI or the digital index. I use an example of South Africa and Kenya to show how the African states are increasingly becoming very intentional in leveraging issues of technology. You know, most of the time when we talk about technological development in Africa, we talk about it as if the state is this lethargic actor. The state is not doing well enough, and therefore it seems like digital development is being shouldered by the private sector or by the international development actors. But actually, that is not the case, and that's why we are bringing in here an issue of state entrepreneurship. We are applying this concept of state entrepreneurship to demonstrate that African state in this day and age, in this particular era of 2000s, is very intentional and has made massive investments in ensuring that they take advantage of technology, or they embed technology to issues of development, issues of governance, issues of trying to ensure that public service delivery is delivered in efficient and effective, sometimes also in an economical way. So the state is public institutions are very intentional about ensuring that policy entrepreneurship are being driven through technological platforms, policy instrumentation, and citizen participation are being encouraged using these particular technologies. So a lot of contributors to this particular volume are drawn from both the academic sectors and also practitioners. I was lucky to have practitioners also contribute to the volume. One thing that I love to point out with the edited volumes that you never know what comes out until it comes out, and so far, what came out is not so disappointing. It provides us with snippets on actually what is happening generally and how the African state is doing, or its systems are transforming towards just ensuring that digital transformation is doing what it is supposed to do. Nevertheless, we have still issues, and issues that are cross-cutting. We have issues concerning the funding. We have issues concerning with the regulation. We have issues concerned with the politics, and we see that in countries like Rwanda, for example, much as yes, Rwanda is doing very well in terms of trying to leverage digital technologies, but it is being leveraged in a way that it suits the regime's own consolidation mechanism. It is not being leveraged in a manner that it encourages or it leverages people's interest. It does not necessarily put a lot of concern to ensuring that people's interest takes the center stage. And I just forgot to mention that the model that we are using this volume is that of PITS, public interest technologies, just to bring that an integrative or an amalgamative terminology to bring in together the role of these technologies in ensuring that they act in the interest of the people. And that will therefore mean that there has to be, some kind of a democratic environment. There has to be some kind of an openness between the government and other actors that are sometimes contesting how it does things. It means that actors must have a voice. and citizens must have some level of engagement, room to freely engage with the state. In short, what I'm trying to say that democracy and democratic development determines the extent to which these digital technologies are being translated into entrenching public interest, and that's where now their effectiveness in as far as policy entrepreneurship is concerned, in as far as taking advantage of them as policy tools in designing public policies, and in as far as ensuring that citizens are brought on board, citizens are effectively involved, whether it is in terms of e-government or in terms of regulating and ensuring that land takes this like what we now have so far. I'm forgetting some of their names, but these digital platforms that are offering financial services are properly regulated and are not predatory towards citizens. So democratic development is a profound factor in ensuring that digital technologies are taken advantage of in a way that they bring the citizens on board and they make the government work with these digital technologies in a way that improves their policy designs and delivery. Also, we have the role of the international development actors, but we say that while development actors, international development actors are doing wonderful jobs so far, especially in as far as funding is concerned. But we noticed that digital technologies in Africa are also taking this local content. They are taking their own way, the manner in which they are being used and the manner in which they are being applied in public policy takes on these localized, innovative mechanisms. The way the citizens are engaging with the government using digital technologies are very much localized. And that's why we say that we need a government to have, to give room for citizens to use these and innovate around these digital technologies to improve government services or to improve the manner in which the government is engaging with others. And I want to go into specific contributions, but so far in the volume, we have like 16 chapters touching on issues of artificial technologies, touching on issues of mobile money, touching on issues of how digital technologies have been used in transportation, touching on issues of how digital technologies are being used to ensure digital participatory budgeting. In the case of Botswana, we've seen how in the book also we are having other contributors focusing on agriculture, how digital technology has been used in agriculture, how digital technologies are being used or how they can be taken advantage of to improve government's funding mobilization using fintechs. And finally, we are also looking at issues of regulation and the ethical dilemmas that come with this technology. These are issues that are being discussed in the mainstream literature of digital development in Africa. And our main concern or the main objective of this book is just to bring this in an integrative and approach to just try to understand what is happening generally in different areas of policy in Africa, different government sectors, what is happening in agriculture, how is it being employed there, so that we know the transformation, the trajectory, what is generally going on, because what we have right now is a lot of case studies talking about these particular issues, either in health or in agriculture or in other places, but we've not understood clearly how, in general sense, what is actually going on. And that was the purpose, and that was the main purpose of why this book, I thought that was very critical for us to just put our head around this issue of digital development and how it works in terms of public policy. What does the government do? Is it improving our livelihoods in general? How are other sectors doing, and which sectors are doing better than others? And that is something we need to know, so that we identify key cross-cutting variables that we need to work on and draw lessons in particular areas that tend to be doing better than others to inform areas that tend to lag behind in leveraging digital technologies. And another issue we realize that because democratization is important and because state is at the center of all this, issues of political will are very instrumental. Issues of institutional capacities are very instrumental, and issues of funding of local innovations are also very instrumental. Areas that we find the state in Africa still struggling with, thus explaining the variations in why some countries tend to do better than others, latching it back to the issue of state entrepreneurship. I think I'll stop there and just let the discussion flow, and I think more details will come as we engage with one another. Otherwise, thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. I mean, I definitely have a few questions. So just want to say thank you so much for the discussion. I thought it was quite interesting. I am going to open it up to questions for those both in the room and online. As people kind of work up the courage to ask their questions. Dr. Onyango, I mean, I have one quick question here, and it's just about the nature of the book. And a lot of the interventions that you were talking about really dealt with, public policy initiatives and public policy interventions. Was there anything that came out that you thought was, as you had mentioned, these cross-cutting variables across different regions that focused on internal processes in the state, the more like public administration side of innovation, and whether that happened at all? So that's just a question. And then maybe let's just take Geshi's question as well, and then you can deal with those two first. Geshi, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you hear me, Rosafetse?
Can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Onyango. It's really exciting to hear about the book project overall, and it's exciting to have you speaking with us today. We're not sure where you are, but it doesn't matter these days. So I have two questions, and actually one is a little bit operational, and then one of them may be closer to the book itself. The operational one has to do with the idea of the book itself, because many of us lately find ourselves, perhaps due to a paucity of literature in this space, invested in these projects to do these, academic/practitioner writings and get some actual documentation out into the space. But I wonder if you could say something, not necessarily, I think you've mentioned the process of producing the book, but perhaps the thereafter, in terms of the reach of the book, the extent to which you think that these kinds of products reaching, I suppose, policy audiences themselves, or having any chance of a policy impact. We all like to think that's what we are doing. But since you're actually having completed a project like this, I'm quite keen to hear your own thoughts about the enterprise of books in this space, and particularly in the digital space, which is fast changing. So that's maybe one aside question. The core question, I really appreciated the comments you made about the active role states are playing and not seeing themselves as passive actors in this space. But in that regard, I found interesting your comments about Rwanda and the politics, if you want, of these things, and what it is a state does that you may see as progressive or not progressive in how it chooses to leverage its digital muscle. Because I suppose one would expect that the digital turn, first of all, I suppose, tends to focus mainly in the public space on efficiency, on increasing efficiencies of what people are already doing and how people are already doing things. At least that's what I've observed. I suppose there is also the transformational potential that many of us are interested in. But if a state is itself autocratic, would there be any reason to assess that state as not being successful in its digital agenda if what it's doing is fairly consistent with the nature of the state? I don't know if it sounds like a strange question, but I'm actually interested in whether our assessment of how states are doing ought to be in their own terms, or whether we feel there are generic or universal terms against which we determine whether they are meeting the, if you want, criteria for effective deployment of the digital.
Thank you very much for that.
So let's, yeah, so Dr. Onyango, let's take those first two questions or sets of questions, and then we'll open it up for a second round.
Okay, thank you very much. The first one was concerning the nature of the book, whether we established issues of internal mechanisms, especially in public administration, and I hope that was the question. If I'm right, yes. Now, a lot of that comes out because, you know, public administration is the state in the state at work. Public policy is being realized through these public systems, public administration, or the administrative systems. What comes out is that there is still need to actually let me put it this way. There are still hesitancy with the digital transformation in public administration in most of the cases that we have in the book. There are problems with the institutional capacities, and it's very interesting that issues of training, while there's a lot of capacity, we call it capacity building, issues of capacity building, the manner in which they're being addressed in public administration. The digital development of public administration is not taking a center stage in that regard. The digital development of public administration is still being seen as this an outlier, you know, something that can be put in, but not as the need that needs to be, you know, effectively engaged in as far as the attitude of administrators are concerned. Even though we see the policy coming out, because now governments are having digital development policies. Kenya has several of them in area of health and the ICT policy. Now, these ICT policies are coming in place, but they're not going in tandem with the attitudinal change that requires the normative shift that requires it to be, you know, to be domesticated within public administration instruments and those who are handling these systems, to just ensure that they match the systems with they find areas where they can employ different types of technologies and how they integrate them to ensure that public service delivery comes out more effectively. And that came out very explicitly in Botswana, where the author was looking at how public administration is trying to make budgeting more participatory. There were a lot of gaps relating to institutional capacities, relating to even the knowledge and public sensitization on how the government is actually using these technologies to ensure public participation or citizen engagement or citizen participation in the budget process. But at the same time, we realize that when you go into the civic space, where now actors are doing this in their own way to engage with the citizen to citizen engagement, there's a lot of efficiency here, especially in the area of, like in our case, we find the area of transport, where these digital technologies are being used by people in the transport sector to improve the service delivery in that area. There is a lot of improvement there. So it comes back to the question of the shift, the cultural shift, bureaucratic culture, shift in the bureaucratic culture to match the kind of digital developments that are ongoing. And also it ties down to the level of digital development of a particular country. So that is something that came out in that regard. Now, the idea of the book and the policy impact part of it. The policy, the book was actually written just to bring in the subject matter of digital transformation into the public policy discourse or public policy as an area of study in our public universities. Public policy until recently is when now it is becoming more, more. We are becoming now more intentional about it. Universities in Africa have not been so much intentional about teaching public policy, and most of the time we've been using the American way of teaching it, using American theories, using American cases. Then when it comes to Africa, we are talking about good governance without necessarily talking about public policy. And PASCA has done a good work in ensuring that universities like Pretoria, WITS, I don't know whether WITS is a partner to that agreement, University of Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, across Africa. They are now sponsoring public policy courses, and I, being one of the instructors in this partnership, I found out that actually we don't even have a course on the role of digital technologies and how it comes into public policy. So it was not necessarily, the idea was not necessarily to improve policy impact per se, but it was just written for instructional purposes, just to bring students, and some of our students are also actually policymakers, to bring this on board, and then we try to have more intentional focus on issues of digital transformation and how governments are using them in our countries. Now, the most interesting question on the Rwandan case and the issues of autocracy, it is something that we have also dealt with when we are talking about the state entrepreneurship. And what happens is that if you look at this digital adoption index, the DAI index, if you look at that index, it looks at the segments of business, people, and government, the extent to which the governments are employing these technologies to improve these particular areas. And in that index, for example, when you look globally, you realize that Russia and even China, which are we can say that depending on the knowledge we get from the Western world media, because we are consumers of the Western world media, the knowledge you find is that they are less democratic. China is less democratic than let's say the United Kingdom, or it is less democratic than other countries we know about. But when you look at China's performance according to these indices, China is actually better in its technological development than, say, which country is that? Than say the UK, for example. And if you look at also these indices, like which one is this? There's another one there I'm forgetting, it's slipping me a bit. You realize that Rwanda is also doing relatively better in its digital transformation. Now, what happens is that, and that's why we think that public policy perspective and public interest perspective per se is very important in understanding how this digital technology should be leveraged. If we only look at it from the macro transformation in as far as whether the state is autocratic or democratic, or whether the state is using these technologies in improving public interests or not, I think what we need to see, or what we need to find out, and I agree that countries should be led to leverage these technologies in their own terms. Context matters, but at the same time, we have this concern for the extent to which citizens can leverage these technologies to contest government's action. What will happen if the citizens go on Twitter and try to contest a particular action that the government has done? We've seen that in Uganda, perhaps the internet is being shut down, or in Rwanda, we've seen reports that these people just disappear. Their lives are being threatened, and therefore we see the civic space is being constrained in that way, and that therefore means that the democracy has a way, the level of democracy has a way of either improving the expansion of digital development in as far as public interest is concerned, or in constraining it. But the government can still use these digital technologies in a way that they use it to prioritize politics of politics of consolidation, political consolidation, where they minimize dissent, but using it for their own propaganda or for their own development, for their interest, or let me put it now, in a manner that does not threaten regime's interest. So there is that's where we are. That's what we are dealing with, this public interest perspective. Are these digital technologies empowering citizens or not? Is it empowering the regime or not? However, the context also matters. There's no way we can have a universalized format of leveraging these technologies to improve public policy. I don't know whether I've answered that question, but the beautiful part of it is that this is a discussion. I don't need to be an expert.
I just want to see if there's any other questions, both in the room, online. We have TK. TK, do you want to jump in whilst we wait for others?
Okay, no, thanks, Chair. My question has to do with thanks for the presentation, and like you said, it's also quite thought-provoking. But it has to do with the point you touched on, the speciality part, that digitalization, especially at the engineering, at that level, and also at the software, is such a specialization. Do you think governments, especially looking at the field of public administration, how ready are they for the interface with this ongoing thing? Because the specialization, usually, if you look at a lot of departments, when you say IT or ICT, it's just linked to people getting new laptops and making sure that you've got an email address. How ready are African governments to do this? Because in the private sector, there's these offices called CIOs, which focuses on that in mass. Just obviously generalizing, where do you think African governments are in readily being able to get the types of skills that will inform policy, so that they're at the cutting edge and not always falling behind the development trends, negative or positive?
Yeah, that's the thing. Governments in Africa have done well in terms of, updating their policy documents regarding technological development, than translating these policies into action, or changing the attitude of their or training their staff, the public servants or civil servants, how to leverage them, what they are, and how they should be used. And you are right. You see, the ICT is some sector, like even at the university, we don't need to go far. Even at the university, when it comes to issues of digital, or issues of technology, it is left for ICT, that ICT has to do this ABCD, while the book is actually getting us out of that. The agenda of the book is actually getting us out of that specialization, as you're putting it, TK, to bring it on board as a necessity, is something we can't do away with. It is something that is part and parcel of our learning process, is part and parcel of our governance thought process. When we are designing a policy, we need to ensure that we identify, because we are in the era of technology, we can't do away, we can't wish away the digital space that we have right now. And we see that a lot of issues are happening in that space. So if an intelligent government will do all it can to transform the civil service, and and positioning it in a manner that it transforms with the digital development that is coming in, because that's where solution seems to be right now. So I can't say we are ready yet. We are not ready, and countries are performing differently. as we've seen in the cases in the book. Other countries are doing better than others, but still not better enough to make sure that service delivery is done in a very efficient way. I was just talking, for example, with a colleague yesterday. We are talking about this entrenched state because, you know, we give a lot of attention to the state's responsibility in as far as public services are concerned, because yes, we are in this social contract with the state, but an ineffective state is even more dangerous if it is well entrenched, very well entrenched, like the South African state, a very deeply entrenched state that is also very ineffective in its service delivery. What comes out, the repercussions are very dire to the society than a loosely entrenched state, like let's say Sierra Leone, or relatively entrenched state like Kenya, where you realize that there are still some informal institutions that work very well in asserting their own public authorities, ensuring order and cutting out and regulating issues of, you know, crime rates, or just ensuring that things are in place in a particular way. So the government being at the center of societal transformation need actually to ensure that it is up to date, its systems are up to date, and citizens should be at the center of this transformation, which technology is something that we cannot leave out in this transformation. But our African states are yet to effectively realize that, according to what we have so far. But there is hope. A lot is happening, and they are making intentional efforts. These days, I've learned to be very intentional about looking at the positive side of what we are doing in Africa, migrating from this good governance agenda of nothing is working. I think a lot is working, and technology is a proof of it. A lot of African governments are doing very well according to their own capacity and their state development, and with the consideration to the level of politics or the kind of politics they have in place.
Thanks so much for that, Doc. There's one question in the room from Dr. Linge. You wanna go ahead?
Excuse me. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. No. So first, a disclaimer: I arrived about 10 minutes late, so I do apologize if my question is something you covered in the beginning of your presentation. But I'm just wondering, and perhaps I'm pushing my question a little bit too far, but there's a couple of concepts that you use, kind of like you talk about citizens' participation and new ways of developing policies. You briefly touched upon sort of democracy versus autocracy and sort of alternative governance models in China and Russia, etc. I was just curious to hear your perspectives on, do you think that technology will be able to sort of revitalize democracies? I'm not just thinking in Africa, but generally speaking, whether technology will be able to revitalize and sort of fix broken democracies in such a way that democracies can produce more effective public policies. I know it's a big question, but I was just curious because I know you have a very diverse background, so I was just curious to hear your reflections on that question.
Yeah, I don't think so. You know, that's why in the book we are anchoring it on the sort of a state development perspective, and there is a book before this where we are actually trying to conceptualize that, and the argument is that state politics, whether it is the state politics, let's say at the state formation levels, we have state formation characteristics of the state development, like we see in Mali, things happening in Gabon, where the state is still not well entrenched and contested in a way that it finds its legitimacy rooted in the society. Then we have this, politics of state consolidation, where we have a lot of democratic deficits and autocracies mixed up. Hybridity is prevailing, like what we have perhaps in Kenya or in Uganda. Then this politics of nation building, where now we are having a lot of focuses on on the nation, creating the nation state, and there's a lot of social diversity is acceptable and all that. But to come back to the question of whether democracy can, whether democracy or whether technology can improve democratic conditions, I don't think so. Technology in the manner of our conceptualization is something that is dependent on the politics of the day. Much as, yes, it comes with its own disruptive implications of the manner in which the state goes about controlling or communicating to the citizens, but it's still not adequate to prevail over a system that is designed and is run in an autocratic manner. And that's why we're talking about regime interest. If the government of the day, or if the regime of the day is bent on politics of control or politics of consolidation, then technology will take that path. The pathway for technological development will be in that way. However, there will be other areas where technology might produce positive consequences, or government consequences, or policy engagement. And it depends the extent to which this, can spill over to also influence other areas to produce similar consequences. And this is dependent on the extent to which also the government allows that, or the regime in place allows that. So technology is not something that we can say that is going to revolutionize democracy in the manner of the way you're putting it, but it can improve democracy in the context where democracy is consolidated, where the social consensus on democratic principles is higher than in areas where social consensus on democratic principles is low, like we see. And that's now the difference between the impact of Twitter in the United States or in the UK and the impact of Twitter in Uganda or in Rwanda.
So Dr. Onyango, are you still with us?
Yes.
So I'm not sure if you're wrapping up your last point there.
Yes. I'm done.
Oh, perfect. No, just double checking. No, thank you so much for that. In fact, the timing is quite perfect. Again, I want to thank you, Dr. Onyango, for the brilliant presentation that you gave today. Yeah, round of applause. There's definitely, hopefully there will be rounds of applause from those who are online as well. I do just want to double check, Geshe, if your sound is working, or whether you are fine with us giving the update on this side.
I'd be happy for you to do it, Vice President.
I mean, I'm just going to read your notes, so I don't know how well I'll do this. So once again, thank you to everyone. So there's just a few updates from the Tairisha side. So it's just to note that the working paper series that we've been working on for quite some time now will be launching quite soon. We currently have 2 book projects underway. I forget, one is Palgrave, and I forget who the other one.
It's a faculty book, CLM, yeah.
The CLM book, yes. We have one book with Palgrave and the other one with the CLM faculty. There are also various regional dialogues coming up, and registrations for the regional dialogues, you can contact Hafdan, who has more information on that. And the registrations are officially open for the CTIF in October. And no, I got mine. So I hope many of you in this room will be able to register, or at least be able to send this off to other individuals. Also, that we will be represented at the IceGov conference. For those who don't know the IceGov conference, it is the kind of UN organized conference on digital governance that's quite prominent. And it's currently being hosted in Brazil, in Belo Horizonte, at the end of the month. and they will be announcing something quite exciting, that the next conference will be hosted in South Africa next year. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, Geshe, that we will be hosting the next iScarf conference in 2024, which is a fantastic achievement. It's a really high-profile engagement. It really shows how the center is moving in a positive direction. So a big hand of applause to the team that really helped bring that together. Thank you so much. And 2024 is going to be a really big year for us in terms of digital governance in Africa. So because of that, be on the lookout for calls for papers. I'm not sure the idea of the PhD track and industry track here, but be on the lookout for all our notifications and messages about the work that we're doing over the next little while. We are ever growing. I think the faculties officially recognized us. I don't know as what exactly yet, but we are officially being recognized in the university as an institution of the university, which is very exciting. And it's all due to the help of everyone who attends these sessions, all of those who really help us out on the day-to-day. Once again, I want to say thanks to our never tiring leader, Zibusiso, who constantly puts these events together for us. And I just want to say a huge thank you to him. And then once again, a huge thank you to Dr. Onyango for his presentation and all of you who've attended today. And just to note, the next discussion will be held on the 5th of September of October. I was wondering, sorry, my notes are wrong. On the 5th of October, 2023. So please be on the lookout for more information about that, as well as information about our Exec Ed short course. But we'll share more of that in the weeks to come. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. I hope you had a fantastic lunch.